Is the destiny of man controlled by some transcendental entity or law? Is it like the hand of God hovering above? Well, being more of an agnostic, I tend to fall closer to a deterministic point of view, where I think everything has a cause and effect relationship to everything else. So a lot of things that happened were set in motion a long time ago, and there's only so much we can do about it. But considering how certain events have played out in the past, I do think predeterminism has its merits too, where some things are fated to happen regardless of how humans might try to influence it. Hey everyone, world-renowned Malcolm in the Middle expert Fox here. So between finishing the Nier retrospective and being away at Magfest for almost a week at the start of the year, I've been feeling a tad burnt out lately. If I'm being honest, even getting this video out was somewhat of a challenge. It's nothing major, just gotta get back into the groove of things. I do have a bunch of projects started for this year that I'm genuinely excited about and slowly been picking away at, but it's just taking a bit of time and effort to get things going proper. So in the meantime, since it's been a while since I did a Q&A video, I figured this would be a great way to stall for time. I mean, answer some burning questions people might have. Anyway, what are some of your favorite boss themes? Well, Undertale definitely has a bunch, but I specifically adore the Hopes and Dreams intro, which transitions into Save the World at the end of the Pacifist run. It's just an amazing track for that sequence. I'd also mention Red's theme in Pokemon Soul Silver, It Had to Be This Way from Metal Gear Rising, Silver Bullet from DMC5, and Rivers in the Sand from Persona 5. Actually, all the final bosses from Persona games are bangers, especially Battle for Everyone's Souls. That one is simply a perfect way to end that game. Any plans to cover more anime-related videos? I don't know why I would, because I covered all the anime that are actually important. You know, One Piece, Fullmetal Alchemist, Gargoyles. There really isn't any more anime to cover. So yeah, definitely no anime on this channel anymore. That it would just be a waste of my time if I'm being honest. Just nothing relevant to talk about. It's just all garbage. I would like to see the continuation of reviewing the remaining Batman Arkham games after making a video on Arkham Asylum. Not really a question, but in regards of if I'm going to be continuing the rest of the Arkham games, I definitely am. To peek behind the curtain a little bit, I have all of Arkham City recorded and I've been playing through it a bit more, and I have my notes page that is relatively full up. Now it's just a matter of sitting down, doing the research, putting the script together, and then doing the rest of the process. But it's also a matter of when I'm gonna do that. I can't make any promises, but I would like to do that before the middle of this year, before June-ish. But I also know how promises with me work when it comes to when I'm gonna make a video, so I'm not gonna make any hard set promises. But yes, expect me to return to the Arkham games at some point in time in the near future. What game made you really disappointed in 2019? If I'm being honest, I would probably say Astral Chain, and this is coming from someone who pure platinumed the entire game, so this isn't coming from massive disappointment, I really hated it. It's more disappointment for what I think it could have been, because there's a lot of shortcomings with that game. The story isn't great, there's some jankiness with how it controls. I think it just overall could have used a lot more polish. And I think a lot of its shortcomings just come from the fact that the devs working on it are a little younger, a little bit more inexperienced. But I think as they work on their craft, so to speak, I think they're going to make better and better games, because Astral Chain is still a really phenomenal game. It's just, in my opinion, not Platinum's best work. Besides Angry Twitter Platinum Man, who would you want to direct DMC6? If we were to get a DMC6 and Itsuno chose to be a executive producer on the project, where he was more overseeing it over directly directing it, I would honestly like to see Ikumi Nakamura as the director. I know she's become a bit of a meme at this point with how she's seen at presentations. Sometimes I think people forget that she's a director and a really accomplished concept artist, and all the stuff that she did with Bayonetta, Okami, Evil Within. but I think she could bring an interesting perspective to Devil May Cry. Obviously, this is a what-if scenario, and I'm not even going to say that she would be the perfect pick, but I would just be interested to see what she would make in that situation. Plain and simple, what's your favorite Devil May Cry character design? Unironically, I think my favorite is Dante in Devil May Cry 4. I don't know what it is, I just really like his pseudo cowboy look in that game. I don't even think it's the best design, I just really like that specific one. What is something you would change about your favorite game? Honestly, the blood vial system in Bloodborne, I can kind of see what the designers were aiming at, but they honestly should have stuck with the Estus system from the rest of the Dark Souls series, because it is such a hassle when you run out of blood vials after dealing with a really tough boss, that you have to go back to the early levels and just grind and grind and grind for more blood vials. It's just not a great system, and it ends up being really, really tedious for no reason, when basically every other Souls-like game has figured out, yes, the player is gonna be slamming up against bosses and tough enemies multiple times. Their health refill system needs to recharge at every stop, not be a quantifiable thing that they can run out. So that would be my pick for it, because outside of that, Bloodborne's pretty close to a perfect game to me, but it's just this one massive flaw that kind of cuts down on that. Your favorite JoJo part? Anime part 4, manga part 7. Your favorite One Piece movie? Definitely One Piece Film Z, mostly because I think Zephyr is one of the best film villains that One Piece has ever had, and it also gives a really interesting insight into how the Marines operate in a way that even the anime's never really gotten into, and I just think that's a really cool approach to how they did that movie. Are Fire Emblem retrospectives in the future? If so, which entries are you going to start with? If I'm being honest, probably not. Definitely not the entire series, because there's a lot, and I don't know how much I could really say about each individual entry, but I would be interested in talking about one of them at least, because I do love the Fire Emblem franchise. I think looking into Awakening specifically would be really interesting because of how it affected the franchise, both in how the games operate and also how they are perceived. The only major issues are that it's a 3DS game, which means it would be very challenging to get footage of. I would need to get a capture card unique to the 3DS. And also, it would make it a bit frustrating to edit due to aspect ratios and whatnot. So it's not something I'm racing towards, but I am considering it. And this also ties to another topic of, what is a topic you'd like to talk about but haven't been able to cover, and why? Honestly, there's a lot of things that I'd like to talk about, but for one reason or another, I just haven't. These can range from they've been covered extensively, there's not a lot of great footage to use, it'd be a massive challenge to edit. One type of thing that I tend to keep away from at this point is doing anything that's extensively manga related, because manga is possibly one of the most frustrating things to edit around. Talk to anybody that regularly has to do editing using manga and they'll tell you it's kind of a nightmare, because unlike video game footage or TV shows, they kind of fit perfectly into a 16:9 or 3:4 aspect ratio. But manga, you have to regularly squeeze into those frames, and then to make them visually interesting, you have to do a bunch of keyframing, and it honestly just gets to be a little bit tedious to a point. Not saying I wouldn't talk about more manga in the future, it's just one of those prohibiting factors. Do you enjoy wrestling? I actually really like wrestling. The only problem is I don't keep up with it, so I'm always very behind on what the current goings-on are. Fortunately, I have a friend that always updates me on the cool events that are currently happening, what's going on in NXT, what's going on in New Japan, and I honestly wish I could get into it. It's always just the intimidation of where do I even start, and where do I watch it, where do I stream stuff. This is also a big reason why I really liked Lucha Underground when I was watching that, because it has a clear episode 1, season 1 to start off on, and then you just go from there. But in terms of stuff like WWE or New Japan, stuff like that, there's a lot to go through, and there's 50 years of history that you have to almost learn as you're going through stuff. But one of these days I am going to try to get into AEW, since that's fairly fresh and there's not a lot that I'd have to learn and go through. But that's also a matter of investing the time, which is also a limited resource for me. What made you start making videos? Frankly, I don't have anything really interesting like some people do. I've been making videos with friends for a few years before I started my channel, just making a bunch of random little things here and there. We tried multiple stuff. We did a little LP channel for a little bit. We tried our hand at machinimas, just a bunch of little things. And then I was experimenting with my own editing, making little AMVs just for practice sake. And then at some point I just was like, hey, I have opinions about games that I really like, and hey, I'll give this whole YouTube thing a try. And unfortunately, 3 years later, here we are. Favorite track from Nier? That's like making me pick a favorite child, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Song of the Ancients, with an honorable mentions to Grandma. How are you doing? Stuff doing alright, bro? I'm doing alright, all things considered. Top 5 favorite anime. I never really have a hard set list, so don't hold me to this, because it could honestly change tomorrow. But currently I'd say FMA Brotherhood, Monster, Mob Psycho, Cowboy Bebop, and One Piece. What are your top 10 games of the decade? Again, this is not a hard and fast list, but if I had to pick out 10 games from the last 10 years that I really love, Bloodborne, Nier Automata, Transistor, Devil May Cry 5, Bayonetta 2, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Arkham Asylum, though I might be pushing the time frame on that one, Undertale, Civilization 5, and Shovel Knight. Would you remake any of your older videos, either to update the contents or because the style is outdated compared to current videos? Frankly, this has been on my mind for quite a while, especially with the older Devil May Cry videos, because those drive me nuts with all their problems. The only problem is that investing time in remaking those older videos would probably be better spent in making new videos about stuff I haven't already talked about. Because while I have the scripts already made and, all the footage is already gathered, it would still require me to touch up the original script, probably have to add in a bunch, take out stuff. Then I'd have to sit and re-record the voiceover and then go into editing and basically do an entire overhaul. I'd be basically just making an entirely new video at that point. And again, I feel my time's better spent making new stuff rather than touching up old stuff. I also worry that if I got into the habit of remaking older stuff, I would be in a constant never-ending cycle of going back 2-3 years ago and finding old stuff to fix, and that would just be a bad habit to get into. Maybe in the future when I get maybe another editor on, or I quit my day job and I have a little bit more time, maybe I could look into spending, extra time and going back to specifically the Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3 videos and remastering them. But as of right now, I'm not in a hurry to get that done. Would you do a retrospective on a series you dislike? Probably not. The retrospectives take a bit of time and effort to put together, so I probably wouldn't cover an entire series that I dislike, just because the passion wouldn't be there. I don't think I have anything that I have a burning hatred for that I would really need to put that much effort into. But if it was an individual game that I disliked from a series I did like, that would be a different story, but I don't think that's what you're getting at. What's the least on-brand, whatever you feel your brand is, game you adore? I think people are sometimes surprised how much I really like the Civ games. I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into Civ 5 and 6. I don't know if that's off-brand for me, but it's not something that I've extensively talked about on the channel before. Outside of gaming, I think people would be kind of shocked that I unironically adore Food Wars of all things. I don't know what it is about that series, I just find it really charming, and I don't know why. So, yeah. What is one challenge you faced as a YouTuber, and how did you overcome it? Honestly, most of the things that I've overcome as a YouTuber is just through brute force, practice, trial and error sort of thing. My thumbnails definitely got better over time just because I slowly picked up little lessons as I went on, like how to do drop shadow, how to orient pictures, where to get good thumbnail sources, stuff like that. And then in terms of getting better at recording, that was something that took forever because when I started doing YouTube, like a lot of people, I was hyper self-conscious about how I sounded, and you can definitely hear that in my older videos, that I was very restricted and really held back, for lack of a better term. If you listen to some of my older videos, you can definitely hear some things different with my voice, and even now you can still kind of hear it, but it's just been me learning to gradually get more comfortable with the mic. There is still a lot of challenges that I'm slowly trying to overcome, but like most things, they aren't really anything that I've sat down and tried to get better at. It's mostly just me learning as I go. Are there any channels here on YouTube that inspired you to create your own content? There's actually a lot of other channels that inspired me on a regular basis. The Super Best Friends, when they were still around, were a big influence for me. And then there's the really big channels like Red Letter Media, Lindsay Ellis, Philosophy Tube, H Bomber Guy. H Bomber Guy is actually who I was kind of looking at when I started diversifying my channel's topics, because I really like how he covers such a wide range of things that I wanted to do something similar. And then there's also people that I know, like Codex Entry, Clemps, Super Eye Patch Wolf. I find the people that I actually know are bigger influences just because I don't think it comes across in my content, but I can actually be a fairly competitive person. And I always find I do best when I have someone unintentionally pushing me. So when someone I know does a really good video, I find I work harder to try to keep up with them. And I'm not even trying to surpass them or beat them. It's just I want to be keeping up to their standard. I don't want to be left behind sort of idea. So yeah, there's a huge amount of influences I have on YouTube. What makes you choose the topics for your videos? There's a few factors that come into it. How long is the thing? How easy is it to get footage? What would I even write about? But one of the biggest things is just, what do I have passion to talk about at that moment? That's why when you look at my topics, it tends to be a bit of a scattershot, just because there's a lot of times where it's just, this is what I want to talk about right now, and this is what I'm doing a video on. And that's the driving force. I wasn't expecting to do a video about gargoyles, but at some point it was brought up on Twitter, and I thought, oh, I'll go rewatch that just out of curiosity's sake. And then, a day later, I start writing a script for it. So yeah, it tends to be very random. And that's why, to all the questions asking if I'll cover X, Y, or Z topic as a retrospective series or something, there is a chance I will, but it's definitely nothing ever set in stone. Just at some point, I'll probably go, oh, I should make that Vanquish video. But my schedule tends to just be whatever is currently grabbing my attention for this current moment. It's probably not the best way to run a channel. I know I could definitely be a bigger channel on YouTube if I planned out my stuff better and organized it, but then the passion wouldn't be there, and I think that would show in the content. Anyway, that's probably going to do it for questions for today, but before I sign off, I want to give a big thank you to everyone that stuck around the channel and continued supporting me. I was around 30k subs at the start of last year, and now I'm pushing 75k at the beginning of this one, where I'm starting to be able to look at making videos as a full-time job. And that all literally wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for all of you. Whether it's through sharing my stuff around with your friends, supporting me on Patreon, leaving encouraging comments, or just sticking around and listening to me talk about games or shows for nearly an hour at a time. It's incredibly cliche to say, but it all means a great deal to me, and I hope in 2020 I can keep providing content for you to enjoy. Between video games, anime, and TV shows, I have a lot of different stuff I plan to cover in the next year. And I'm hoping to make it to a couple more cons in the future too, after Magfest was such a blast. In terms of what's coming next though, well,